Hey, welcome along, Dave. Appreciate your time having a chat to us about your successful swim across the Cook Strait. Firstly, congratulations on that swim. Now, we've got a little bit of an interview planned that we'll go through and talk about your training and how the day unfolded. But firstly, I just want to touch base on who you are and what your background is. Now, one of the things that a lot of people know but don't really know about you, because you've got some pretty interesting history around the sports scene. But one of the big things is you're a Metallica fan. So I thought I'd wear my Metallica shirt. That shirt I got when I went and watched them,
As
because
if
we're
not
both
by
Metallica
fluke.
fans. Oh, look at that.
It's casual time. I'm out of uniform.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly when or where or how you started in endurance sports, but we were triathletes rocking around the North Island
Yeah.
of New Zealand back in the 90s. I didn't actually meet you properly, or I wouldn't even call it meet you properly, until the National Duathlon Champs in 96. Now, I don't know if you recall meeting me or not, but I was out and you were out doing a course check for the bike, and you rolled up behind me and we rode along for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. There was a few other people with you. I was out by myself. You had recently been on the cover of I'll call it a bit of a fanzine. I think it was called Triathlon Monthly or Triathlon and
Oh,
Multisport or something. It was
yeah, John
literally a
Pike.
photocopy newspaper about the triathlon
Yeah,
scene in New Zealand. It was pretty cool. I forget the name of the guy that put it together, but
yeah. It was John Pike from Rotorua.
that's the one.
Yeah,
Yes. I knew he had a strong swim coaching pedigree. So, and he put a lot of work into promoting the sport
yeah,
back
he
then.
did.
So, yeah, and then you went on to a number of Ironman adventures and have, well, you joined the army at some point. When I've met you, you can't have quite
Yeah,
joined because you had dreadlocks then. And you've had an army career, and then in the middle of that, you left the army and went to university and did a range of study that culminated with a PhD. Yeah, if I can get you just talk about some of that and where that PhD has led you in the elite strength and conditioning sports world.
yeah. No, thanks, Ray. Hey, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. Yeah, really, really happy to be here. And with what you sent through, I see you've done your research as well. There was a few things there that I went, oh yeah, a '90s triathlete. And that was some pretty cool times back then. It was in the day. No one was too pretentious. It's back in the old fluoro tights and speedos, and we used to race with. We didn't even have to wear tops in those days,
Uh,
and everyone used to just
there we
cruise
go.
along. Oh,
Sitting
look
right
at that!
there.
That's it.
That's
Oh,
old
it's like
school.
my old client, yeah. No, so I mean, my journey's been, I guess, quite different, and to a point, I've never planned it like that. It's just sort of evolved and morphed as it's gone. And I'm someone that's always tried to take opportunities when they arise. Hence, my path sort of through sport, always been sport. Been a runner since I was 5 years old. Couldn't swim to save myself, so my latest challenge has been a lot of years in the making. And then the academics and the military. Yeah, so I guess when did I join? I joined the army in '94. I'd been a triathlete for quite a few years, and I guess we get to the point. I'd been an okay age grouper, but I guess the reality hit that I probably wasn't going to be a Cameron Brown or at that level, and make an elite living. So I thought, well, I can join the army and do both. So I did that, and then really really enjoyed the army. Still represented New Zealand at 5 world champs during that time, but then sort of wanted more and took the path down the academics to Otago, I guess, where we crossed paths again. And yeah, did my phys ed degree at Otago, and then got involved with rugby there. And I guess I sort of decided that for career wise, I loved my endurance sport, but in New Zealand, pretty tough. As you know yourself, pretty tough to make a full time career in the endurance sport. So rugby was my path, the strength and conditioning, and then from Otago, was lucky enough to get the head job with Waikato, head S&C coach. That was in 95. Yeah, 95. I had a wee gap. And then carried on with the Masters, work with the Chiefs. Lucky enough to go and work in Samoa. Spent 4 years full-time in Samoa. And I've actually just, that's no, I mean, the S&C has been a really cool path. I've just come back from my 4th World Cup. Last year I was in France with Samoa, my 3rd World Cup with Samoa. So had an association of close to 17 years now with Samoa. And I guess the process for me is just always wanting to get better at what I do. I've never wanted to sort of settle for the status quo. I've always wanted to challenge myself, and that's how sort of the PhD evolved. Performance work, I was working in what we called the human performance cell within defence, pretty small cell, but doing some quite specific work. And I was working on a course down in Woodburn, the JOIC, Joint Officer Induction course, where it was just bombarded by injuries, lower limb injuries. So I sort of got in there and started to shape it a little bit around high performance. And then I'd really wanted to do the PhD, and it just sort of evolved talking to an old sort of colleague, Dr. Matt Driller, who I did my master's with. He was at Waikato. We talked about doing some work. We found out there was a hole in the sleep in this area. And then we thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. It's never been looked at before in the New Zealand Defence Force, or in New Zealand to this level, or even worldwide at that level. So the opportunity was there, and it's been a really cool path. And, all the research has been published. Done quite a lot of speaking off of it. I'm actually heading down to talk to the Crusaders in about 2 weeks' time. They got in touch. I'm doing a little bit of stuff with Fonterra. So it's more around the sleep and performance in all facets now that has really changed my thinking around performance and what I do. So it's sort of been a natural progression from the strength conditioning.
Nice.
But again, just always wanting to challenge myself.
Recovery is the most essential part of training, and sleep, hand in hand with nutrition and a few other things, is the largest component of that. You can probably talk a lot more detail, but in terms of just big rocks, recovering well through quality sleep, you can't go past it, can you?
No, not at all. Not at all, Ray. And again, like I just said before, that's where I've changed my thinking. I was always a competitive athlete, but a pretty competitive S&C coach. And, I was probably a bit cocky in my day when I started with Waikato, and I know my program's better than yours and we're fitter. Now that I look back, bigger, stronger, faster. But unless we're consolidating our recovery through sleep, we're wasting our time anyway. And that's been a big realization for me. And on this latest pass with my training, we'll probably talk about this in a moment, the way I've learned and reshaped my training for swimming the Cook Strait. Definitely one of my foundations was sleep. A lot of the performance work I do within defence at the highest level and across the board, even on civvy, in just everyday public, is one of the biggest things I really push is things like cutting your caffeine consumption from lunchtime, because that messes with your melatonin release, which messes with your sleep. In corporate environments, academic environments, if we do not get good sleep, we do not consolidate learning. So I've changed my thinking around this. Hey, yeah, we can, I actually think it's pretty dangerous, some of the stuff out there in the social media and YouTube and some of these, I'm a bit of a David Goggins fan. He's not too bad, but there's a few other people out there, and sleep when you're dead, get up and work when everyone else is sleeping. Yeah, you get away with it for a little bit, no doubt, but long-term effects will catch up with you. And for recovery, well-being, learning, consolidation of all these things, unless you're sleeping properly, I really think you're doing yourself a disservice.
Oh, absolutely, and without doubt. I take some velocity classes with my athletes. I recorded a class literally yesterday, Monday, where I spent 45 minutes talking about recovery, and the big thing I pushed was sleep. We don't improve, particularly as we're not elite athletes. We don't have time to focus on recovery. We've got to fit our training around our lives. And we've still got to optimize that recovery. And if it means doing less training or cutting some of the intensity out of the training so you can recover well from it, as we get a little bit older, that is more and more important. So, but anyway, we're not here to talk about that too much. We might tee up another time to talk a lot more detail about that.
Let's do it.
But we're here to talk about swimming the Cook Strait. Now, someone watching this on YouTube that's not from New Zealand may or may not be familiar with what the Cook Strait is. It basically separates our two main islands here in New Zealand, very imaginatively named back in the day as the North Island and the South Island. And the Cook Strait runs roughly, I want to say east to west, west to east, but it's on a bit of an angle northwest through to southeast. 22, 23 kilometers on the shortest point, but there's a massive current that flows through it. I think it was Barry Davenport in about 1968 was the first person to swim it. He was a surf lifesaver from the Worcester Bay Surf Lifesaving Club in Wellington. Since then, a handful of people have done it most years, with some people doing double and triple crossings. But this is your first time swimming Cook Strait, I believe. But you have done some pretty significant open water swims and marathon swim efforts previously. Tell me how your day went the other day when you swam Cook Strait.
Yeah, look, the day went awesome. It was just epic. It was great. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was a bloody solid day. Mentally, I had to be focused from the moment I jumped in the water till I finished, and it was a solid day. But everything went to plan. Like, sort of, my wife has always been my key sort of crew person. We ran a pretty tight crew, the Independent Observer, and I used Grant Orchard from Katabatic Charters in Picton. So sort of a new crowd on the block, but really, really awesome service. Yeah, look, it just went, I mean, the day went really well. But again, as we touched on recovery training, everything, it only went well from the preparation that I had done in the months leading up. I guess I was locked in for this swim. Like you say, it's pretty tight to get on the schedule because there's only so many swims per season on the tide windows. And if you don't get in, you miss out and you can wait for years. So I was actually booked in sort of June last year, even before I went to France to the World Cup with Samuel. So it was interesting trying to train. I was training in the Mediterranean in warm water, which was awesome quality, but it wasn't cold, and then in hotel pools. So that was all right. But yeah, look, I was set, ready to go. I was supposed to be, the plan was to be in the water 5:30 in the morning. I was ready to swim with my red flashing lights, and I got a phone call. And that's the thing with these things. It's like, it's live. You've got to be ready to react. Maybe that's part of our, being from Toke, being in the military, I can roll with changes. But I got a phone call the night before saying we're actually not starting at 5:30 now. We're going at 7 in the morning because Grant's latest, his up-to-date, his text had said, look, if you're in the water at 7, you're going to get a surge off the coast for 2 hours. You'll get slack water and then get pulled around. That's sort of what happened. We got pulled to the north a fair bit. And when you look at the tracking, a lot of people were surprised. I didn't know I was getting pulled north that much. I literally swam right through the middle of the Brothers, which was pretty cool. And those that know the Brothers will know it's got the lighthouse on top and the buildings. I've been past it on the ferry once, so it was pretty epic to be swimming through that, taking a breath, looking back up at the lighthouse behind me. And then we sort of got swung back down south, so to speak, through the current. Yeah, look, once the sun came out, it was really nice. It was a little bit choppy there, and then it was just a pretty solid push across to the North Island to Ohau Bay. Yeah, just sticking to the plan. I mean, the plan was, and I do all my own planning of previous, swam off the coast for an hour and then feeding every half an hour on the dot.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned your wife is a key member of your support crew. You had a reasonable support crew. I know Mark Grammer was part of that. He comes from a pretty impressive endurance pedigree as well. Yeah, what roles did you have in your support crew? And obviously Catabolic Charters were a significant part in terms of knowing the Cook Strait, knowing the tidal patterns, knowing what to expect based on the forecast, having that quality of support and information and knowledge. Yeah, how does it all unfold, and what are the key parts to it?
Yeah, look, for me, the key parts is, well, a fundamental part is, again, stems back to military, is the 6 Ps, prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. So, we were planning months out in advance. I was trialing things in training, trialing my nutrition and training, and then just working on ways that it would be delivered to me in the water. So originally I thought I may have had more people on the boat, but they wanted to run a fairly tight ship, which I was happy with. So pretty much, obviously, myself swimming, my wife was my support nutritionist, the boat crew, and you had the Grant Orchard's boat, the captain, then there were 2 crew people. There was a couple of people in training. And the reason I got Mark Grammer, for those that know Mark Grammer, athlete himself, coach, but he does professional photography. So, being a pretty special day, I wanted it recorded, and he did a fantastic job with the photos. And having his drone up, and being an athlete himself, he understood what was going on, so wasn't getting in the way, and actually contributed to it. I think the crew actually enjoyed having him there. So yeah, ran it pretty light. I knew what the story was. I'd had conversations with the boat skipper around what would happen. I'd had conversations with John Scobie, the Open Water New Zealand Independent Observer, and my wife. We knew what was what. So really, I had no thought around this, but from the time I got in the water, I did not get one time split, 1 kilometer split. I didn't know what the tide was doing. I just swam. So every half an hour I was fed, and then I just put my head down and went. And at the end of the day, it was sort of, I was quite stoked. They sort of complimented me and said, man, you just ate your food, took information, put your head down and cracked on. I'm like, well, aren't I there to do that? So I don't know, maybe other swimmers, they want to know, how far to go? What's the tide doing? To me, my objective was over there, and I just have to swim to get there. So there's no issue. The more chit chat, the slower I'm going to get there. So yeah, I knew I had a job to do, and I was pretty focused to get it done.
Yep. And that's one of the things with open water swimming, which is not the case when running a marathon. Everyone says you put one foot in front of the other. With open water swimming, the analogy would be putting one arm in front of the other. But sometimes, if you're not putting that one arm in front of the other and you stop and take a rest, you go backwards.
Yeah,
because the current's taking you that way. So it's important to keep that head down and keep moving.
And it was exactly that, Ray. We'd practiced it in training. So my feeds were 30 to 40 seconds. So everything was, I mean, there's a few videos out there. If anyone wants to have a look, they're on Facebook, and we're putting a video on YouTube soon. We had it on a rope system with carabiners connected to my drink bottles, using baby food squeezies because it's high in carbs and all the energy I need. And then any other squeezies, it was duct taped with a piece of string. So it was literally floating in front of me. I could just grab it, twist top, squeeze, drink, and just chuck it in the water and just swim. And they just pulled it back in and had the next lot ready. So we'd worked that to a T. I'd been practicing on a kayak with my wife where we train in Waikawa Bay in Picton. And then it got to the point, though, my swims were so long that my wife was like, man, I'm not sitting on the kayak for 6 or 7 hours. So in the end, I found got a really good space. It's the new Kenna Beach by the marina in Waikawa Bay. For those that know that, on the backside of Waikawa Bay, really sheltered. I can park my truck literally 10 meters from the water, and there's a new boardwalk. So I could have the back of my truck unlocked and lay my food out, and it's all tinted. So I could just go and swim and then come back to my truck and feed. So I did walk out of the water for sake of logistics during training, but we knew the time periods would work. And yeah, just tried and true everything. There was nothing new on the day that I hadn't done before.
Awesome. So you've touched on some of your training there and what you did in the Mediterranean. So plenty of open water swimming. I imagine there was a fair bit of pool swimming as well because of the convenience and the lack of logistics required for those training sessions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I was probably some weeks only one sea swim a week, which I was pretty happy with. I tried to get out a midweek, and then Saturday was a big session, but I just looked at it that I really needed to nail the quality of training. And when I'm in Blenheim, I swim with, well, we're not even really the official masters, but Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's a group of us swim. We're just all sort of broken triathletes and runners, but we swim pretty hard. And Martin always puts up the program. When I'm in Wellington, I either swim at Upper Hutt or Stokes Valley, and I'll be swimming morning and night. And I guess this time around, being a little bit older, 51 now, I had in my head previously, I'd swum the Upper Lima Strait in Samoa, swum the length of Lake Taupo, swum, most of the length of the Waiwara River. I used to get up around volumes of 60, 65 Ks a week, but I just found this time around that been having to work with a couple of bicep tendon issues over the last couple of years. We would flare up and down. So I just altered my volume in that I'd swim, I was still clocking up 20 Ks in 2 days, but I'd swim 2 days, have a day off, and then I'd be biking and doing strength. And then, single swims on the Thursday and the Friday and Saturday, I built as my big open water swim day. And I really, really focused on that, nailing that one day and then recovering out of that before I picked up my volume again. And it worked really, really well.
What sort of distance were you swimming on those weekend open water longer swims?
Yeah, probably I was getting up around 22, 23 Ks. And then sort of there was a period because I was in France with Samoa. I mean, I was still getting some okay swims, but I just had to, get a bit of adaptation when I first got back. So I sort of built it up. I was out around 12 Ks, then 15 Ks, 17 Ks, sort of structured it. But yeah, up around the 20, and then definitely getting well above the 20. Yeah, a few other different things. I mean, our swim squad in Marlborough, we do our Christmas 100-100s, which is just an end of year session we all do now, and we get more people through it every year. 100-100s on 140. So managed to knock that out quite comfortably, and a few other sessions like that. I live right next to the Wairau River, and just for ease, 83 steps from my back door, I could be jumping in the Wairau River by the ferry bridge, and I swim down past the rowing clubs or up and down the river or 15 k's to the sea. So that's a different stimulus because it's fresh water. I sit a little bit lower, and I can swim with the current or against the current. So I mixed it quite a bit for ease of it, but also just mentally to have some different changes too.
Awesome. What sort of things would you do differently if you were going to swim it again?
Oh, I don't know. I would probably, yeah, I got across the strait with no issues with my shoulders, and maybe it was right. I'd maybe look at, I think just a little bit more strength training, and then I don't know, Ray. I'm really pretty happy with the way that it went. I would probably have started my build up a bit earlier, but maybe blessing in disguise. I was in France and I could only do what I could do. I probably had a little bit of lag getting back into some decent training once I recovered getting back from Europe, just because I was on with Samoa, was full on for 3 months. So maybe that just a gradual build up over the winter.
Okay. What tips would you have for someone considering swimming Cook Strait?
Most people that pick my brain about it, what I would be saying to them straight away is get your wetsuit off. You've got to go and swim non-wetsuit. So, and a key thing with that is when I first started this, I swam the Upper Lemma Strait back in 2018 and swam really well, but I was still I was coming off the back of sort of triathlon, and I was priding myself on still being quite lean. I was sitting around the 86 kg, 84 kg, probably around 94 now. So I've had to put on a little bit of weight. So one, if you're going to do it, get your wetsuit off and just feel what it's like in the open water. And also, I really, really cannot stress enough, just get used to cold water, cold adaptation. So again, living by the Wairau River, every single day I'm home, I'm in the river, where no matter what it is, summer, winter. And I live literally 250 meters from where, those that know it, Spring Creek comes into the Wairau River. So I actually get in the creek all year round for as long as I can. My boy comes with me sometimes. My trusty mate Mika, my dog, loves it. So we get up there and actually get in the cold whenever I can. And I mean, I take opportunities wherever I'm in Waiuru. My go-to is I'll run from the officers' mess to the top of Waitangi, come back down from Waitangi and just strip off to my bike pants and sit in the pond at the bottom of Waitangi in the cold, regardless if it's summer, winter, just for as long as I can. Wherever I go, beaches, lakes, rivers, ice baths after the boys are finished at training, just that constant, that incremental adaptation of cold, I think has got to be one of the biggest keys. And I mean, another thing I would do is I quite often used to plan my training, and one of my good mates, Cole Edmonds, that I used to swim with, the pig hunter extraordinaire from down in Marlborough, would like, what's the weather doing? And I'd say, I don't know. I haven't even checked the weather forecast. And he's like, why not? I said, well, because I don't really care. I'm going to swim no matter what. I'll just go and swim what's there sometimes, if it was a horrendous storm or whatever, I might change it, but I would just generally swim out and swim back or do my circuits or go out. Where it's safe, I'm not going to set myself up for failure, but get used to swimming into the wind, get used to having to breathe from one side, get used to being beaten around in the open water, because it's quite different. It can be quite scary if you're not used to it.
Absolutely. And it's all about having your comfort zone and pushing the boundaries a little bit, not jumping right out and going swimming in a flood, like you mentioned, the safety side of it there.
I was lucky enough to get into the Cook Strait just before Christmas with Katabatic Charters. They were doing their WorkSafe New Zealand audit, and they needed a swimmer, obviously, that was capable. I was still building up, and I jumped at the chance. And I'll admit, that was December. I jumped off the boat, and I was like, crikey, this is cold. Just out from Tory Channel. When I jumped in the water on Thursday morning, as I went under, I actually had a little smile on my face. I told my wife that night, I had a smile on my face, because as I jumped in the water, I was thinking, oh, this is awesome. I'm onto it. Everything's worked. I was comfortable. It wasn't until the end of the day they told me it was 13 degrees this morning, Dave, and that's cold. But I actually found it comfortable. So yeah, that cold adaptation had definitely done its job, and maybe a bit of extra fat as well.
Yeah. And the frequency and the regularity of you getting that cold water, I'm sure the top 2 inches, you were familiar with it. It made things easy for you. I'm sure we can guess that your key workout in the build up to swimming Cook Strait was your long open water swims. But what was your go-to pool session?
Oh, my go-to pool session. I'd probably say either something like, I like swimming these. I try to mix it up. Like I'll quite often do kilometer sets broken up within the K. So I might do 5 1Ks or 6 1Ks or 8 1Ks, but I might mix drill amongst it. Or I'll do a pool set for a K with back sort of, 200 swim, 50 back, just to break it up. Or another key session I was doing just to make it a bit different was like a pyramid set, swim sort of like 100, 200, 3, 4, 5, and then 5, and then back down. So it gives me 3 Ks. I could swim that twice, and that would be 6 Ks, and I'm through that quite quickly.
Nice.
Yeah, but just a key thing for me was I knew I needed to work on this. Was always doing bits of drill every single swim, and a bit of advice from a couple of swim coaches too. Frank, who's at the swim school in Stokes Valley that I talked to, like he didn't coach me, but he just would look at some things. I chatted one day. He goes, "Dave, there's 2 types of swimmers: those that kick." And before he'd finished a sentence, I said, "Yeah, those that don't," and I probably don't. He goes, "No, you're a classic triathlete." So I actually had to really work pretty hard on my kicking over the last year. So getting the fins off and just kicking with a kickboard, and it actually worked. I felt like my timing and everything was a lot better.
Nice. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else you think might be important for people to know or get a vibe for?
I think just get in the open water and swim, and just get comfortable with it. Get comfortable with sort of being out there and start trying things that work for you. Definitely an area I've changed over the last few years was my approach to the nutrition. So obviously coming from a triathlon background, we're used to things like our Lepin squeezies or our Hawley squeezies or our power bars, and lots of high energy carbohydrate food, which is already, I guess, to a point broken down, so it's absorbed very quick. That's good, but it's just really rich in the high, I don't know if it's the high processed sugars. It just, when I finished, say, the length of Lake Taupo, I was just in bits for the next couple of days with like reflux in my throat and my esophagus. So I changed things a wee bit, like using the baby food, low sodium baby food, because I'm in the water already, the salt water being absorbed. Things like, the baby food custards, using warm up and goes, because at least it gives me a little bit of protein, but it sort of lines. And then, another thing I was doing was intermittently just using mouthwash. The mouthwash in the sea just lines your mouth and stops the salt from sort of ripping your tongue and your lips apart a little bit. But, look, mate, the key thing is just get out there and have a crack. I was laughing the other night with my wife, specifically for Cook Strait. I've wanted to do this for over 10 years, but I started by going to Rarangi Beach, and middle of winter, and my daughter would be standing on the beach with my jacket and my jandals, and I think I lasted 5 minutes, my first swim. But then I was getting up to like 45 minutes, and people would come up to her going, "What's he doing?" And she said, "Oh, he's training for my daughter would take pride and say, "I was training for the Cook Strait." That was about 4 years ago. So it was just that process of getting started. Yep. Get out there and get started in that cold water immersion stuff. I mean, there's stuff to do with it, with the protective proteins on the brain. And my dad passed away from Alzheimer's a couple of years ago, the final effects of it. So I do it for other reasons as well, around the health reasons. But that's probably another chat sometime. But just get in and don't be scared and just start.
Awesome. Well, once again, congratulations on your swim. It was an awesome effort. I loved watching the Facebook feed during the day. Kept on popping up. I'm sure it was your wife, was it, managing that side of things?
Yeah, my wife was doing a lot of Facebook stuff, but Mark Grammer was doing a lot of the footage and all the drone footage. Yep. And I mean, probably just jump to mind there. Our final thing I would say is, I'm probably someone who's, I used to do the width scramble at school, at intermediate school sports. I couldn't really swim. I could tread water, but I couldn't swim. So you know, I'm come from someone who couldn't swim to doing that just by purely applying yourself. I wanted to be a triathlete, so I had to learn to swim. And then through injuries, I couldn't do it, but swimming was the way. So it's just really applying yourself. So, you know, dream big and we can achieve a lot of things.
Absolutely. And before we wrap things up, I know you spend a lot of time with the Manu Samoa boys, so let's hear your best. Nice work, man. Nice work. Hey, thanks for your time, Dave. Appreciate it as always, and look forward to catching up properly and having a beer with you in the future at some point.
Cheers, Ray. Pleasure.
No worries. Thanks, mate.